Spalding Gray was born with hereditary predispositions to depression and bipolar disorder. He was reported to suffer from periodical depression for over 2 decades of his life. Gray's mental and physical state would be permanently affected after a car accident in Ireland in 2001. Gray had been on vacation with his wife, Kathy Russo, in Ireland in celebration of his 60th birthday when their vehicle collided with a van. Gray, who was sitting in the backseat with no seat belt fastened, was knocked unconscious when his and Russo's heads collided during the accident. As a result of the accident, Gray suffered a fractured skull, bruises, face swelling, noticeable facial scars, and a broken hip that limited his movement and left him in crutches suffering from severe pain. After Gray's facial swelling subsided, an X-ray done uncovered a compound fracture on Gray's skull and bones of his eye socket. Surgery was strongly advised, and Gray returned to New York City, his city of residence, for surgery to remove bone fragments that were putting pressure on the frontal and right lobe of Gray's brain. The fragments did not cause severe damage, according to the surgeons, and titanium plates were inserted on portions of Gray's skull, and excess fluid was drained. Despite the accident, surgery, and prolonged recovery, Spalding Gray seemed to be in good spirits. Gray made 2 performances in Seattle, Washington, during Labor Day weekend 2001. Then, the next week later, Gray's mental condition suddenly declined, and he slipped into a severe long-term psychotic depression. In the 2 years after the accident in Ireland, Gray had undergone 6 additional surgeries and was prescribed several psychoactive medications such as Prozac, Celexa, Paxil, and Depakote to treat his depression. These treatments did not significantly improve his condition, and Gray even attempted to seek alternative medicine through acupuncture, though this was also unsuccessful. With a semi-paralyzed foot due to an injured sciatic nerve from the accident, Gray was prevented from engaging in physical activities like dancing, hiking, and skiing, which Gray stated provided him mental stability. During a consultation with neurologist Oliver Sacks in the summer of 2003, Gray was noted by Sacks to have a lack of discernible facial expressions and a lack of engaging conversation. Sacks suggested that Gray was also suffering from neurological problems, in addition to his chronic depression. His depressive state was perceived to be unlike any previous depressive episode in Gray's past that was typically resolved with a talk therapy session. Gray was reported at this period to be losing his interest in past enjoyed hobbies and struggled to hold a conversation with others. In the years following the accident and onset of chronic depression, Gray continued to travel and make performances, although his behavior in these performances was noted to be degenerating from Gray's past peak performances. Gray had been admitted to a psychiatric facility in Connecticut in June 2002, where he was prescribed Depakote, a medication that can be used to treat bipolar disorder. This stay in the facility failed to make improvements to his condition. In September 2002, Gray had leapt off of his boat with the intention of drowning himself. He later reneged and held on to the boat. Days after, Gray was put into police custody and returned to his wife after concerningly looking at the water and pacing around the Sag Harbor Bridge in Long Island, New York. As a result of his recent suicidal behavior, Spalding Gray was admitted to Payne Whitney Psychiatric Clinic in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, New York. There, he received over 20 shock treatments and given multiple drugs over the course of his 4-month stay there. None of the treatments given were effective, and Gray appeared to be deteriorating even further. His wife Kathy Russo stated that Gray was a broken man when he was discharged. In June 2003, Gray and Russo went to UCLA's Resnick Neuropsychiatric Hospital in Los Angeles, California, to receive testing on Gray's brain for clarity. His test reportedly returned back with subpar results, which showed attentional and executive deficits typical of right frontal lobe damage. Doctors informed Gray that his mental condition could possibly reduce further and that he would be very unlikely to proceed with the same accustomed quality in his profession. In Russo's words, Gray was morally devastated by the news. Spalding Gray had informed Oliver Sacks and one of his colleagues in July 2003 that the suicide of his mother in 1967 was recently lingering on his mind. Gray reportedly felt like he was repeating the same circumstances that led to his mother taking her life. Gray had told Sacks that he was intrigued and interested in suicide, reportedly having frequent thoughts about it. Gray admitted to regretting not committing suicide while at Resnick Hospital. Gray had stated that the idea of suicide rose, like a black sun, every day. Gray also stated that the 2 years since the accident were gruesome, going on to reportedly say, "I haven't smiled since that day." Sachs had met again with Gray on September 9, 2003, and Gray revealed that he remained grim despite a recent brief perceived reversal of his depressive state before the meeting. Gray revealed that he was unable to secure recent work and that he had staged a suicide rehearsal the previous weekend before the meeting. He stated to consider jumping off either the Brooklyn Bridge or the Staten Island Ferry. Gray had often rode Staten Island Ferry to relax. Gray stated that he was too afraid to act when his wife and children came across his mind. Gray had surgery performed the next day on his right sciatic nerve in an attempt to dislodge it from his connected scar tissue to reinstate mobility in his foot. After the surgery, Gray's mental state reportedly appeared to significantly improve temporarily. On September 13, 2003, Gray left the hospital unexpectedly without checking out, leaving his money and identification at the hospital. Gray was later found on the Staten Island Ferry after leaving a phone message to his wife that he was contemplating suicide again. He was found and involuntarily admitted to a brain rehab unit at Kessler Institute. After being released on October 28, 2003, Spalding Gray performed 2 monologues in the following weeks. After one of the performances, he left a note for his wife Kathy. This note for Russo detailed Gray going through his commitment to jumping off a bridge in Long Island. The note then detailed that a significant number of witnesses that were present to the suicide attempt rescued Gray back to shore. Russo revealed that Gray had often written suicide notes and left them on the kitchen table of their home during this time. Oliver Sacks revealed that Gray had once stated before his death that his mind was swarmed with fantasies involving his mother, water, and drowning. Gray stated that all his fantasies had involved drowning. The reason Gray gave for his fantasies involving water and drowning was that it meant returning to the sea, our mother. Psychoanalyst and Forrest Gray's godfather, Robbie Stein, had stated that he made multiple attempts to convince Spalding to not kill himself. Stein, recalling, stated, "He was always caught up in the idea of, I have to end this all because it's killing everyone around me and myself and it's the only answer to this thing going on inside my head." On January 9, 2004, Gray was observed leaving his wallet on a bench while riding the Staten Island Ferry and was pacing over the railing of the ferry. He was subsequently escorted off of the ferry by security. On January 10, 2004, Spalding Gray took his children out to lunch and to go see the Tim Burton film, Big Fish, which is about a dying father's relationship with his son. At the end of the film, the father returns to the river, where he dies. Gray had reportedly cried after the film. That evening, Gray had left his Manhattan home, alleging that he was leaving to visit a friend. Gray left home without leaving a suicide note, which was considered abnormal behavior for Gray by Russo. The 62-year-old Gray was then declared missing on January 11, 2004. Police searched Gray's 3 different residences for clues and were unable to uncover anything useful in solving his disappearance. NYPD investigators had received over 200 tips in relation to Gray's disappearance. Multiple inquiries were given by witnesses that they witnessed Gray on board the Staten Island Ferry shortly before he went missing. About 2 months later, in early March 2004, Spalding Gray's badly decomposed remains were discovered in New York City's East River. He was positively identified by New York City's chief medical examiner's office through dental records and X-rays. It was determined that Gray had committed suicide by jumping off the Staten Island Ferry into the New York City harbor. Spalding Gray was survived by his wife Kathy Russo, 2 children, including son Forrest and son Theo, and 2 brothers. A memorial service for Gray was later held on April 13, 2004, at Vivian Beaumont Theater, located in the Lincoln Center complex of the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Spalding Gray is buried in Oakland Cemetery in Sag Harbor, New York.